Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murder. Today, we're on part 108 of The Life Beyond the Grave, which is attached to the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case. I'm trying to finish up this humongous series. So, this is going to be another audio podcast. It's around this time in May of 2019 that Alex Cox is told that he is an angel and a protector to his sister Lori, just like Laman and Lemaniel, a story of Nephi. Laman and Lemaniel became rebels instead of leaders, resentful instead of righteous, all because of their failure to understand either the character or the purpose of God. This is where it kind of says to me that Lori might not have had a righteous path she really wanted to take. It is said that Laman rejected the role he should have played and instead wanted to be the top dog in the manger, resenting Nephi's spiritual leadership. Lemaniel was not only Laman's dutiful satellite, but he was also his enabler by allowing himself to be stirred up by Laman. So is she saying that Alex Cox is her enabler? Basically, these people are not true believers in God, okay? They pretty much believe that they can do as they please. In other words, there would be no law and no sin. I don't have time to go into the complete story, which would explain exactly who these two rebels are, but it kind of gives you a glimpse of who Lori compares herself and her brother to. She believes, well, she said that she's being told that she and Alex are going to be like these two rebels. So who is telling her this? Now, I put together a clip that might help you understand. But what I want to do is ask you guys, Mormons, non-Mormons, doesn't matter. Listen to this and share your thoughts below of what Lori Vallow might have meant when she said that she believed that they were going to be like these two guys.
Laman rejected the role he should have played and instead wanted to be top dog in the manger, resenting all the while Nephi's spiritual leadership. Lemuel was not only Laman's dutiful satellite, but he was also his enabler by allowing himself to be stirred up by Laman. If instead Laman had been fully isolated, certain outcomes could have been very different. We have enablers in our society too. They allow themselves to be stirred up against that which is good. They are not entitled to a free pass any more than Lemuel. Like him, their comparative visibility is low, but their hypocrisy is high. Exhortations given to Laman and Lemuel were hard to be understood, save a man should inquire of the Lord. And they, being hard in their hearts, therefore they did not look unto the Lord as they ought. This failure to believe in a revealing God was especially basic. Some moderns who wish to distance themselves from God try placing his pavilion firmly in the past. By believing in such a disabled God, people can do pretty much as they please. It is then not many steps further to saying there is no God, therefore no law and no sin. Like Laman and Lemuel, Laman and Lemuel did not realize either that a loving God will inevitably be a tutoring father who wants his children to be truly happy and to come home. Thus their murmuring was a symptom of a pathetic pathology. Laman and Lemuel likewise didn't understand the dealings of God included using prophets to warn people. The Lord had so called Lehi, but Laman and Lemuel were apparently embarrassed by their father's unpopular role and by his stern challenge to Jerusalem's then prevailing mentality. Spiritually numbed, Laman and Lemuel felt that the people of Jerusalem were undeserving of prophetic criticisms that were leveled. Yet a pervasive spiritual decline was actually underway, occurring, as often happens, in the space of not many years. Ironically, those engaged in a lemming-like march to the sea are often proud of their own individualism. Advice is seen as an insult, and counsel as a contraction of their agency. Fundamental, too, was Laman and Lemuel's not understanding that a tutoring God may require difficult things of his children. The role of adversity is noted in this stern but inspired insight. Nevertheless, the Lord seeth fit to chasten his people. Yea, he trieth their patience and their faith.
For me, there's something that tells me that there is a chance that Lori Vallow is not a believer in God as she portrays. This is a tool to get something she wants. This is not fact. This is my personal opinion. This is obvious, for me at least, because her actions do not walk the line of the Word of God. And what she says to Aubrey later basically tells you how she sees people. This is a very big deal when it comes to understanding this case and their motives and their intentions. Lori continues to go to Preparing the People events, many being in Salt Lake City, St. George, Sandy, Utah. And as she gets more involved with this group of people, she is pulling away from some of her closest people, including her sister Summer. And I don't think Summer realizes just how much Lori could care less if she lived or died. As the summer approaches, people like Audrey is actually learning more terminology, and zombie is actually something they're starting to get more familiar with. Around May 31st of 2019, Chad doesn't attend a Preparing the People event. He claims there's a family emergency. And one can't help but to wonder what is going through Chad's head here. Why is it he's not going to this, going to speak at this event? Is he staying at home? Or is he using it as a way to spend time with Lori? Anyone that knows about this time period of Chad Daybell, please drop it in the comments below. There's no doubt in my mind that Chad, he must have some guilt in there where he's cheating on his wife, the mother of his children. He's indoctrinating these new ideas, including prayer circles, in order to cast out zombies. While prayer circles are not abnormal within the Mormon teachings, they have been referred to as the true order of prayer. This was established by Joseph Smith, that some Mormons believe this is a more potent method of prayer and can help you receive better blessings and greater revelation from God. The ritual involves forming a circle around participants, around or a person who offers a prayer, usually at the altar or in a temple. The members of the circle repeat words of the prayer. And it is said that the Mormons actually practiced this conventional Protestant-type prayer circles around the early 1833. It was around May 4th of 1842 that Joseph Smith met with 9 other men and performed the first endowment ceremony. Later, the main purpose of these prayer circles were at meetings of the Anointed Quorum, which kind of started around May 26th of 1843. And women were first included in this ceremony on September 28th of 1843. So we've heard from many witnesses that Lori who is leading this group, has these women surrounding her, and each having their thing or gift that they share in this circle, or say a prayer that they say, as Melanie Gibbs said she did. But this is on another level. They believe that they can actually move elements. They can call on natural disasters. They can manipulate elements like fire and even earthquakes. So many of these women that Lori have in that prayer circle, well, some of them are being kicked out. We know this. It seems that Lori gets very irritated with many of these women. The real reason is deemed to be jealousy, but she gets irritated with the fact that they talk. And why is this important? What this shows is Lori tells a lot of these people that she loves and cares for these people. Yet, she can turn their back on them in a split second. She's doing it to her own blood family. The fact that Chad is jumping on this train and starting to do these same things really says a lot about these two, especially in character. They are very selfish, hateful, manipulative, and could care less that they are destroying so many lives. We know that Lori had moved back to Texas with Charles, told Melanie Gibb that she had finances to get straight. But Charles will ultimately, a few weeks from now, end up renting a house back in Arizona, and Lori will return back to Arizona. I want to mention that because I think I should have the landlord in this timeline here, but I don't see it, so just we'll get to it eventually here. Now remember, Lori is absolutely furious with Charles because Charles has been talking to Lori's stake president. He really believes getting that tip of recommend taken away from Lori will make this huge difference. Now, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, he's already been excommunicated a few times. Now, something we have to remember is Chad Daybell is texting other women. But some of these women, like Aubrey, who he texts, he's kind of pushing them off towards Lori. According to an ex-buddy, Chad Daybell had made advances to married women before. But it seems that Chad Daybell, he's really taken a liking to Lori, and he's starting to cut some of these women out of his life. It appears that his finances are falling apart drastically. He is struggling in every way possible. He's struggling with his marriage. He's struggling with his family. He's just struggling all the way around. Melanie Gibb, who was hanging out with Lori Vallow quite often, I mean, they were hanging out at Hawaii. They're going all over the place. Those meetings are starting to slow down. After Lori visited April Raymond that summer, it was around June, April Raymond says she moves back to Utah from Hawaii. And that will be one of the last times that she sees Lori. So I found this off of difficult research. So you can go catch this entire video there. So before I play it, one thing that April Raymond believed back in February, where Lori first started really going off the deep end, she says she thought perhaps she was going through a midlife crisis, that she just needed to let her go through it and she would get over it and go back to normal. April said she did not feel afraid of her or intimidated by her, but she did notice that she was acting bizarrely, to the point that she suspected there was a chance she might even be on something.
Remembering the conversations that we had in February where she said he's already dead. And then now that everything else has unfolded, it's even, to me, it's more alarming. I'm hoping that there's another explanation, but I'm not sure at this point.
And so this is an interview that April did with a private investigator after Charles is shot. So we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit here. But remember, we were trying to figure out how, if April knew more than what she was saying. She is telling this investigator, look, I was so uncomfortable, I just didn't want to deal with it. So obviously, April was correct. She was just shocked by everything that was happening. She wasn't sure at the time when she was hearing this stuff what exactly was going on. And so it was hard on her.
So the last contact obviously was before Charles. And I don't know, do you still live in Hawaii or do you live somewhere different now?
I live in Utah, so I moved to Utah in June of 2019.
April does share something important that we're going to jump back in time about how Lori Vallow handles the death of Joseph Ryan. Now remember, she's gotten in contact with Joseph's sister and has used that as an opportunity to draw people in for attention. So I believe this kind of stuff is important, that we hear what April says about Joe Ryan's death and what happened.
Well, when Tylee's father passed away, she had come out to stay. That was another time she came to stay and visit with me. It was right after Joe had died.
Okay.
And I know a little bit about the situation, but now I'm kind of going through everything that happened and was said, and it's kind of, I'm having a totally different impression of what happened. My understanding, if I remember correctly, what she told me is that they hadn't heard from Joe for about a month.
Okay.
So she and Tylee went over to check on him or to see him, because I guess Tylee had a key or something. And when they went there, they had found him dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he'd been dead for like a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks or something.
Okay. Did she say anything about kind of the stuff that was going on with her and Joe at the time?
I knew their history, and I don't know how much of what she told me is actually what happened.
Okay.
But I know they had a really volatile relationship as far as custody of Tylee.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, as far as what she told me, there were some pretty serious allegations against Joe. That she claimed he had molested Tylee and Colby,
mm-hmm.
and that was her motivation for keeping Tylee away from him and wanting full custody.
Okay. Did she ever mention anything about Joe's actual death, though?
No, just said that they didn't know. They figured he had a heart attack in his sleep or something.
Okay. So there's a statement that is kind of floating around that a couple people that knew Lori in Hawaii have kind of relayed, that after the fact, after Joe had passed away, that she had made statements that her brother had something to do with it.
That I never heard. I know that before they even moved to Kauai, the original time,
mm-hmm.
that Alex had attacked Joe. I think he shot him or something.
In Texas?
I think it might have been in Arizona. I'm not sure where it was.
Okay.
But I knew that, and I knew Alex as well.
Okay.
And so Alex had told me the same thing, that when he, because he was on board thinking that, this was a child predator, and he says that he snapped and that he shot Joe. But my understanding is he shot it in kind of a public place.
Yeah, so that was an incident that did happen in Texas.
Okay.
So we know about that one. But there's kind of this statement floating around that Lori had made some statements to people in Hawaii that after Joe had actually died, that her brother had something to do with Joe's actual death, not the incident before.
No, she never said anything like that to me, and I had talked to Alex, after Joe had died, and he never mentioned.
Okay.
Neither of them mentioned anything like that.
Anything like that. So, I mean, this is going to sound kind of silly to ask you like this, but obviously, like, you've met them and you kind of know them.
April Raymond will later admit that she did hear Alex Cox talk about murdering, people. So, that I'm not sure what to think. But there's other friends in Hawaii that we're not familiar with that is actually mentioning the fact that Lori was bragging that she had something to do with Joseph Ryan's actual passing, which was not long ago in 2018. So now we're moving forward here. We're talking about zombies. We're talking about castings. We're talking about death threats. And all these past things that Lori has said and done are coming back to haunt her. So do you guys feel that April Raymond might have knew more than what she was sharing at this time? Do you think she was just afraid? Drop your thoughts below. Around this time, Brandon Boudreaux and Melenie Boudreaux, that is Lori Vallow's niece and nephew-in-law. It's around this time that Lori's influence on Melanie is starting to really take effect. So June of 2019, Brandon is about to find out that what Charles and Lori was going through, that wasn't going to even be, that's not going to be something that doesn't affect you any longer. Because it's about to happen to you, and it's about to happen at it's going to be more severe, in my opinion, at least starting off. Brandon, at Lori Vallow's trial, actually testified as to, what's happening in this part of the timeline, and I'm going to share that real quick. So during this testimony, Brandon is actually talking about how he witnessed, Charles going through this very painful process and how he's having some guilt start to hit him because of what's about to happen next.
As I promised Melanie, I kept asking him not to come over and doing my best to help him, but trying to create distance. And so we actually that summer went out and went to Utah to my wife's sister was going to get married, and we were staying at my in-laws' house.
Okay. Did anything unusual happen at your in-laws' house?
Yeah. So my this was in June, and to explain it, on June 23rd, my grandfather passed away of a heart attack, and I got a little bit. His health wasn't great, but it was still a surprise, and so on the 25th, my mom called me to tell me about the funeral. And I had this conversation with Melanie where I told her when it was, and she told me she wasn't going to go to the funeral. She didn't want anything to do with it. And it created kind of
a disagreement between you two?
Yeah, a disagreement. And in that process, this what I thought we were arguing about with like her not wanting to go to my grandpa's funeral, not wanting my kids to go, kind of escalated into something completely different. It just kind of cascaded into a bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense and had nothing to do with me or to do with this.
All right. And when you say to do with this, did it lead to some accusations against you?
After I took a little break after I felt so emotional about my grandpa. I walked for a while. I came back, and I really wanted to break through and have like a honest conversation with her. So I just came and apologized for my feelings and just told her that I would accept her not go to my grandpa's funeral. And I just begged her to talk to me about what was going on and why things were so hard. And she said that if I was honest, then we could work through things. And she said God had revealed some things to her. And so I just said, let's talk about it. I'm like, what is it? What's between us? And she started out by accusing me of hacking her Aunt Lori's computer.
Had you hacked her Aunt Lori's computer?
No, okay. I don't know anything about hacking, and that was not something I did. It was really illogical, which stuck out to me and frustrated me because I didn't know it had anything to do with what we were fighting about.
How did that conversation end?
It escalated some more hours, and then I kept trying to talk through it with her. Eventually, her father got involved, and we talked to him, and she wouldn't talk to him with me, but I talked to him, and she was saying she didn't feel safe with me at the house, and she accused me of being a homosexual, which is another thing that didn't make any sense, but Charles had been telling me previously she was going to say,
Okay.
I was going to convince her.
Okay, so she made those various accusations. How did it end?
It ended with her going to sleep and me feeling kind of overwhelmed. And finally, I texted Charles and Lori that I was frustrated with them, that I felt like this was on them. And
did you ever hear back from the defendant?
Lori never answered or responded. Charles talked to me.
Did you, without getting into what somebody told you, what day was this?
June 25th and in past midnight, so into the 26th.
Okay. Did you have additional, and that's 26th of June, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have additional conversations with Charles in the following few days?
I did. I talked to him again after I kind of worked through some stuff with my dad and my ecclesiastical leader, and I went to a counseling session. I called him. Oh, sorry. With my dad, with my ecclesiastical leader, our bishop is what we call him, and then I went to a counseling session, just feeling a little overwhelmed, and then I called Charles that night and talked to him. That was the last time I talked to him, and just I felt kind of maybe like he was the only person who knew what I was going through, because he'd gone through all these things earlier, and just told him I was sorry for not being there.
Because you'd kept your distance at your wife's request.
Yeah.
So Melenie Boudreaux suddenly is mimicking her aunt to a T. And she's telling him, you're looking at these images on your computer that suggest that you may be gay. And what's happening is, it seems that Melenie Boudreaux is making up lie after lie after lie and trying to pin everything on Brandon as to why they're going to separate. He's going to explain a little bit more of what he was going through. So you can see at the very beginning, Brandon was like, I'm just going to keep my nose out of it because I don't want it to affect my life. I don't care basically what they're going through. But now it's happening to him. And this is where things start to change. And this is where he starts to actually get more involved and more helpful, I'd have to say, in this case.
It progressed for you in your relationship with your wife. Did you eventually reconcile, or did you divorce?
No, we ended up divorcing.
Okay. When did you divorce?
We did a mediated divorce, so we started the process after I got back from my grandpa's funeral. She left. She just took our car home, so I took my kids and flew home. And when I got home, she let me know that we had to do a mediated divorce. We had to do a divorce, and so that would have been in July. I started going through the process.
Okay, let's pause it right here, and actually we'll come back to this in July. So now you have Melanie Gibb, Melenie Boudreaux, Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell. All of these relationships, they're falling to pieces. But another relationship that's fallen to pieces is Julie Rose, but a lot of people are not aware of that. And we've already heard from several witnesses that have shared on forums that their marriages are falling apart. So this is happening more at the end of June. So let's jump back to the beginning of June, where Chad Daybell is doing more of his searches on Google. He's looking up that demon name, Hiplos. So while during the beginning of June, we can assume that Lori is playing some kind of role into placing some very wrong and inaccurate information into her niece's head, her own niece's head, to where she starts to suspect that her own husband, Brandon Boudreaux, has been possessed by a demon or another dark entity sometime after June of 2019. I mean, Melanie and Brandon have been together for 11 years. They had a beautiful family. It was nearly perfect. But now Melanie Boudreaux has been sucked into this cult. And she's sacrificing everything for this belief system. In an interview with Justin Lum, the document man, one of the top reporters for this case, he interviews Lori Vallow's uncle, Rex, who gives us an inside look of what he knows that was happening around this time with his nephew, Alex Cox. Make sure that you go back and you check out Fox 10 Phoenix. Look for Justin Lum, Lori Vallow's uncle, discussed it by convicted murderer statement. Real quick, Rex said that, he talked to Alex, or he somehow knew some of these belief systems that he was getting interested in. And at times he was laughing at it. And then there's other times that he bought into it. This is kind of reflects how I see Lori and how she believes in this system, but yet doesn't at the same time. So anyways, let's listen.
Because when he bought in, he had his conversion to what people call a cult, I'll call it their warped belief system. He had a conversion to that, an experience, whereas one day or 1 week he was laughing at it, and the next week he had bought in completely with some of the podcasts he listened to. And so at that point is when he became the avenging angel, or whatever she called him in the text or in the text or emails that we've all seen. So obviously he has some loyalty to her during the Joe Ryan battle, but he wasn't bought into that whole what did Judge Boyce call it? I loved it. Bizarre religious rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole, yeah. He said that yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, then when he had that conversion experience, he went down the rabbit hole with him, and yes, he was all in at that point.
I myself never believed that Alex Cox was 100% believing any of that. I think he was worried about his sister feeling crazy. I think he was there. He was having fun with it until it got too out of hand. There was more going on with that than what people realize. Anyways, guys, I've got to go. But don't forget about our missing girls here. Share their face on your social media today. It's very important. And I've got to go for now. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.